Absolutely a guest today that is going to share her real life caregiving story. And this is one of my goals for this year, is to put more real life stories on the pedestal. I don't have anything against experts. I happen to be viewed as one of these experts in senior living. But what I found is that a person talking about their journey, whether it be finding a retirement community, caregiving, going through, legal issues, estate planning issues, a person talking about their journey is so much more authentic and so much more meaningful than me, giving you some kind of checklist or running down a bullet list. Um, so, uh, Today we've got Nicole Smith, and I am delighted to welcome Nicole to the stage, and we can get started here. So first off, Nicole, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I know that, talking about anything personal to a group of people can be challenging, but I think what I sensed when I met you is that you want to help others by sharing what you've learned and sharing your story. And so I'm real excited for us to have go on this journey together today. And for those of you who normally tune into these discussions, you usually see that my opening remarks is, hey, Nicole, let's get to know you a little bit better. But I happen to know we're going to get to know you through this discussion, but because I know that this caregiving story that you're going to share is about your mom, let's start with, hey, Nicole, let's get to know your mom a little bit better. And so, Nicole, do your best to sort of tell us. I know this is an emotional way to kick things off, and what a compliment to your mom, by the way, that you are emotional. I think every parent would be honored that their children would respond that way. But tell us a little bit about your mom, and then we'll kind of get into the caregiving story.
Thank you, Steve. It's great to be on. And as I was, oh gosh, as I was talking to you beforehand, it's like the wave of emotion just hits with no warning, no whatsoever. And because anyone who knows me knows that I'm outgoing and I never shut up, and I love to talk, and I love to talk with people. So I'm not shy, and I'm not a stranger, but this whole caregiving journey came out of nowhere, and I had no planning, no expectation, no clue what to do, but we figured it out. So my mother, she lived in California for the last 20 years, and I live in New Jersey, and we all grew up in Iowa, so we've all scattered coast to coast, and but we are still a close family. So I was definitely, in touch with my mom, visiting back and forth for holidays. My husband's family is in Southern California. So I wasn't out of touch with my mom at all. We were definitely in touch, but I had no clue that there was any kind of cognitive challenge going on.
Wait.
Go ahead.
So this is good. You've sort of
Heat it up.
Heat it up. But let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
Tell us about your mom. Like,
my mom. Yes.
Did she have a profession? Where did she grow up?
Okay.
How did you and your dad you meet the dad and all that? And it doesn't need to be lengthy, but I kind of want to get to know her a little bit better, and then we'll talk about the caregiving journey.
Okay, no worries. Like, my mom she's feisty and outgoing, and she met my dad when she was in Iowa, and she got pregnant with me, so that's why they had to get married. So shotgun wedding, and scandalous for a Catholic family, but I survived, we survived. And so she was always feisty, and she got married and had me, my brother, and my sister, and we were she was good, but then My parents got divorced because she wanted a career and she wanted to go to college and she wanted to move up and out of Iowa. And so she did that. So she sheer determination, she got her degree, got a job, moved, ran a company with my stepfather. She worked for Xerox for a long time. And then she ran a consulting company with her sister and her daughter, my sister, for a while in California. So she was just always a dynamo. She was our whole family has always been active in volunteerism. She was very involved with Habitat for Humanity in Dallas and Los Angeles.
And
And yeah,
okay.
so that was her shirt I found in her closet. So I had it made into a pillow for her birthday. She's always been an activist. And so then yeah, so she's always been a feisty goer, doer, beer. Yeah, so the Habitat for Humanity was one of her primary causes. And well, the one story I want to tell is that so she was always on these boards and in these meetings, and she's tiny, like she's 100 pounds, she's 5 foot tall. And she would say people would come up to her after the meeting or run into her, and she's so tiny. And they're like, oh my gosh, I thought you were much bigger because she was so boisterous and loud and outgoing. So it was just funny. So.
And then here's another photo that you shared with me. I'm assuming that this is you and her.
Yeah. So I was 16 and I had the 80s big hair, and yeah, it was about 40 years ago. Yeah.
I see the resemblance.
Yeah, no, you should see even now. Yeah, we look a lot alike for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so we got a picture that mom is a vibrant, purposeful, person that's had an interesting life. So now let's kind of lead into the caregiving story that that you started with.
Yeah. So she lived in Los Angeles, and right kind of shortly after they moved there, my stepdad passed away, which was very sad. He had cancer, and so that was kind of devastating to her. But she had this company with her sister and my sister, and they were doing consulting for hospitals and very vibrant. She was running that and still very involved in Habitat. The neighborhood they moved into in Los Angeles was very vibrant and all kinds of neighborhood activities. She had a very active social life and friends and family and business, and was always busy. And then they closed the business around 2014. It kind of ran its course, and she was kind of getting ready to retire. And so that, that went away, which was one of her very primary mental, physical, purpose-driven kind of things. But she still was involved in Habitat some and other things. But then we still saw each other, and she was busy. She didn't travel the world. She didn't really date anymore after my stepdad died. So she didn't have that spousal connection, but she still had us and my step siblings and everything, and people visiting. And then when the pandemic hit, things just started going downhill. And I invited her to come be in my bubble in New Jersey, but she didn't want to leave California. And I called her every day, but that wasn't, that's not the same as being there. And so then different.
Let me give you a little chance to pause there, because okay. You've really and reflect is that you've brought up now some of the main issues that we talk about on these discussions. Is the first thing is you've got this purposeful life, and I think a lot of us don't realize how much our jobs and businesses make up that purpose, because you sort of alluded to the fact that, hey, this was now gone. She's not doing the consulting, and there's less, less there. But it sounds like she's still in a connected space. The other thing that you brought up is, again, our number one topic on these discussions is solo aging. Is that, here mom is, and she's got a business, and she's got this vibrant life, and she's married, and one spouse outlives the other. And he passed away in 2014, you said, or
no, he passed away in 2002, but yeah. Wow. And then, a lot. Yeah. So, but she never dated or anything after that. Yeah. And so then the business kept her going for another decade or so. And then that dissolved, and yeah. And then her
And
sister, who ran the company with her, she moved to the East Coast. So her sister, because she wanted to be closer to her kids. So yeah, so she lost her spouse, then her business, then her sister, then, yeah.
okay, and then at this point in the timeline, is there anybody out in California, like family related?
Yeah, my sister, her daughter still lived pretty close by.
Okay. And your sister was able to pop in and do.
Yeah, and she has a couple kids, so they were definitely around more, for sure,
Okay,
for sure. So she
great.
still had, some grandkids in her life, which was definitely helpful, for sure.
But
Yes.
but the pandemic hits and it rocked all of our worlds. And it's like, I mean, how many families do we know that it's like we were scared straight? I mean, it was like grandkids were not seeing their grandparents. You're waving in the driveways, doing all that type of stuff. It was just a horrible time for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, the whole world was affected. So I mean, we're still, the effects are still reverberating, right? And so I didn't really realize what was going on. And then so my daughter ended up going to school in Southern California. And so when we moved her out to go to school, then I popped up to LA to see my mom. And yeah, things just weren't right. Like weird things, and with credit cards and paranoia and false truths and stuff. But she's always been feisty and I'm feisty. And so we were yelling at each other and fighting about things and arguing, and and that's just the way we are. So it wasn't, but the paranoia, I was like, this is, you're not in reality. And I had no idea. The only thing I'd ever heard about with Alzheimer's was that, Ronald Reagan had it and he was old. And that's just one of the things that happens when you're old. That's the only thing I knew. That's the only reference I had. But thankfully, my aunt, her sister, has been a nurse and in healthcare for half a century or more. And so she was also is very close to my mom, and had made some mental, physical, medical observations, and started the path to get some tests done. And then, but my mom was resistant to that, and that's a whole other story. Like, and her driving was challenging, but she didn't want to lose her independence. And, so there was, the reality did not, what she was doing was not in reality, but it was her reality, and nobody could tell her any different. And it was very contentious from the get-go.
Okay, so again, you're bringing up things that are always coming up in our discussions. Sounds like mom was living in a car dependent community.
Yeah.
Okay, so she doesn't want to give up the car, doesn't want to move. How do you you're concerned for her safety and well-being, and we can get into some of the things that you did to address that. But and then did you find a doctor to do a formal diagnosis, or what happened?
She was part of the, she was in a healthcare system out there. So, but it's a process, right? You have to go to your primary care, and then you have to get the referral for, the neurologist, and then you have to do some lab work and some tests. So my aunt facilitated all that and helped her but then getting her to go, like making sure she went, because she didn't want to go. She would cancel the appointments when she would get the text. And so there was a lot of back and forth going on, but, we eventually did get some initial diagnosis, but again, she was in denial for all of it. And I was flying, eventually we were flying back and forth cross country and tag teaming and taking her to appointments and monitoring things and trying to rationalize with her, which did not work. And then finally, I got an elder care attorney. I didn't even know there was such a thing, but I finally started calling down the list that we got from one of the hospitals, and I landed on this man who was a godsend, and he helped us navigate.
Okay, so and again, I know that this is emotional. Thank you for sharing this, but it's interesting, because if you didn't bring that up, that was going to be my question. Is that did you stumble into any professional that kind of helped you navigate this? And it sounds like your first landing spot that was meaningful was an elder law attorney. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that I want folks listening to this to kind of realize is that there's no one way that I have heard people entering these various systems. It's there's elder law, there's aging life care, there's pulling up into a parking lot of a nursing home and just talking to the person behind the front desk. And so this is interesting because, again, you all were doing a lot of this before you stumbled into that elder law attorney. So
Yeah, well, because we were coming into it blind, and it's just basically, it's what crisis do you address first? I mean, my mom is physically healthy and able-bodied and mobile, but other people, it's a fall that, you fall and break your hip or something, or you have a bad accident or something. And that's what launches but you're putting out fires. That's all you got to do is you got to put out this fire and then this fire and then another. So, we did convince her that she needed to look at elder care, or senior living facilities. And there's a lot of nice ones in Southern California. And she would say, okay, I'll go look. But, she was just basically, making us feel comfortable, or just, appeasing us for the time being, but she had no intention of going anywhere. But we knew, financial wise, she could not stay where she was, either financially or mentally, we knew, but again, she refused to believe any of that at all. And,
okay. So now, first off, this is great. And again, this is something that we talk
I'm all over the map.
regular basis. Yeah. But the elder law attorney that you connected with, I'm assuming that reference was primarily given to you because some estate planning elements needed to be set up, and you were potentially looking at this like, hey, if she develops a cognitive impairment.
Well, fortunately, she did have her trust and will and estate and everything in place, but that had just recently been updated and so that was lucky. But the problem is that we learned that, we had no control over her physical, like if she was physically adamant, even though she's tiny, she's mighty, she was not going to leave her house. And so I started calling elder care attorneys. I'm like, what, do we have to go conservatorship or guardianship, or how do we make this happen, or what do we need to do? And so all of that came into play because I had no idea, because other than, throwing her in a straitjacket and ripping her out of the house.
Which again, we all have to remember these are adults, like this is, what have you. So we got a question from Mary, and she says, thanks, Nicole, for sharing your story. So informative and helpful for so many of us are going through a similar situation ourselves or a close family and friend. Great job. What were the most important questions for you to screen, choose, and hire the elder law attorney? And did you talk to more than one, or was
so I went dialing for dollars. I went dialing for an attorney. So I had this list from the hospital, and I just started dialing, because I'm of the generation phone calls, whatever. I don't go to the websites, I go to the phone. And so, some of them would have these weird answering machines. Some of them had services. Some of them had receptionists that were clueless. One I called, they're like, she's on leave. And I said, well, when will she be back? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, not going there. And so I literally went just down the line. And then when I got this man, he's probably in his 70s. And so he picked up the phone himself. He and his wife have a small practice. And so, we just started talking, and I resonated with him, and he had issues with his in-laws. And so he had knew of it on a personal level, and he was nearby. And, it's just, again, I was talking earlier about the vibe. Like you listen to your intuition, and you got a vibe. And I had a vibe with him. I had my aunt talk to him, and she agreed. He was, he had experience, he had compassion, he had personal experience. He was, and so he was their stability.
This is really good because, so many, whether it be an elder law, an aging life care manager, a daily money manager, move manager, what have you, one of the things that you're illustrating here is that call more than one. And for those providers in the audience, or people who are listening, whether you're a senior living, home care, what have you, did you hear what Nicole said? She made all these phone calls, and it's that first impression. Figure out how, when somebody calls you, that they get a positive impression right at that moment. because if whoever's answering the phone or responding to your emails is not putting off a positive vibe, you're going to lose a lot of people who you could help. Okay. But I love what you said, Nicole. And I know it's not scientific or academic, but it's sort of like you talk to a bunch of people. Okay. Out of this bunch of people, who did I have a good vibe on? And that's a smaller universe. And now you look at that and it's like, well, who did I have the best vibe on? And then you can dive in and do a little bit more research. So I think that's a great response. And Mary, I hope that that's helpful to you. And by all means, feel free if you're looking for a resource or anything like that, and you can't find, maybe you're not in the Mid-Atlantic, I'm more than happy to help you if you're out there listening to this. Okay. All right. So now I understand part of the reason to get the elder law attorney is like, I don't think mom is safe at home and she doesn't want to leave. And what are my choices? And is there a legal way that we can basically tell mom that it's in your best interest to leave?
Yeah, and what I tell people and what I learned is there's kind of 4 areas of focus when you're concerned about an elder. So one is driving, which we definitely had an issue with her. One was finances, which we definitely had an issue. One was meds, which also was an issue because she had been prescribed Aricept but was not taking it because it was new and it wasn't in a routine. And then the 4th is cooking, which you had the fire guy on a couple weeks ago, right? But my mom never cooked. Like she ate Cheerios and Oreos, basically. Like we didn't have to worry about her, cooking and blowing up the house or leaving something on the stove. So that, we had one that we didn't have to worry about, but the other 3 were very, very concerning. Anyway, so we just we started. So the other thing is ask your friends, ask your neighbors, ask your faith at your church or whatever, because I had a friend here in New Jersey that works in senior living and works with all these geriatric care managers. And so I asked her, I said, what do I do? What do I do? And she goes, well, all my attorneys, all my people I know are in New Jersey, and law is so different state to state. She's like, I can't help you. I mean, because again, I didn't know if I was going to move her to New Jersey. So I said, do I need an attorney in New Jersey to get her over here? Do I need the attorney in California to get her out of there? And, in California, they call it conservatorship, and here they call it guardianship. Like it's so different state to state. So with all this whole caregiving journey, so I have 5 children, 3 aging parents in 6 different states. So I'm definitely coast to coast going insane. And so and the other thing that I want to share is my elder care attorney, after we kind of had settled down, he told me, he said, well, congratulations. Now you know a ton about something you never wanted to know anything about and you'll never use again. And I was like, I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it. I'm going to broadcast it. I'm going to share it. I'm going to help. And that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. And, Nicole, this is a great segue to how we met, is because, so folks, Nicole is telling this personal journey she went through. And like you said, she's motivated to help other people. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that you've already started doing in that direction. But that's why she reached out to me. And when I heard her talk about why she was doing this, I was like, would you be interested in sharing this story? Because I think it could help other people. So, okay. So, the plot twist here is that you're coast to coast, mom is resistant, but you're getting legal things done. What happens next?
Yeah, well, it all came to a head. So I start crying again. So
That's okay.
So we had agreed, mom had agreed to look at some places in California. And so I started calling those to try and make it happen faster and figure it out as I was doing the legal and the financial and all that. And then she finally agreed to, she kept saying she kind of wanted to be in California, but I said, well, I'm in New Jersey and your sister is on the East Coast. So, maybe you should fly to the East Coast and look at and be closer to us out here. And so I think she knew that we were encroaching and closing in and we were going to do something, whether she liked it or not. So she agreed to fly to the East Coast to look at some places. And then long story short, she escaped in the middle of the night. It was freezing cold and she went wandering and had some guys from coming out of a bar take her to a hotel, and then she tried to book a flight, and then we had to intercept her at the airport, and then I mean it goes on and on and on. But the good thing that happened was she was out of California and near us, and we basically had control of her then. And then everything else unfolded. And again, it's a long story, but she was here and now she's in memory care in on the East Coast in a safe place near us. But it was a long journey together.
Okay, but this is great. Now, your sister in California. So, what? Just out of curiosity, what was the motivator for the geographic shift all the way across the country to be close to you versus staying in California and being close to the sister?
Well, that's another issue that comes up, is that family dynamics are never,
Oh no, this
peaceful.
is a fact
And
of
this
life.
one blew up in a big way. And we just did not feel my sister was attentive enough to my mother and her situation. And my aunt and I wanted her near us.
Okay.
And so my sister was all for that plan. So she's the one that actually flew her, she got her on the plane and got her to fly cross country, and then basically walked away, which was, which is fine. But the contention within the siblings is definitely at astronomical levels.
No, and we hear the stories like this every day. And when you're going through it, you think you're the only one going through it, but that's one of the reasons why I'm glad we're spotlighting this, because this is a fact of life. Even in the most functional families, this can wreak havoc. Okay, so Mom is here, and I forgot that her sister's here. So there's sort of two family caregivers that are here. When she came here, did she go straight to a senior living community, or did she stay at one of your houses while you shopped around for a senior living?
Yeah, so that was she was willingly coming out to shop for senior living communities with her sister and tour them. And but then she escaped in the middle of the night and everything went crazy. And then we were doing telemed or tele interviews with different some in New Jersey, so and trying to get her into a place. And the one near me, they wouldn't take her, and we were it was crazy. And then eventually we ended up in the emergency room, and then she was admitted to a psych hospital, and then finally after about a month discharged directly to a senior living house. So it was a long, horrible journey, but that was, at the end, that was the only course we had.
Okay, great. Now let's see. Mary has a question. She says, thanks so much. In hindsight, what are a few things that we and our elderly relatives can do to prepare for this type of situation, especially how to handle those relatives who are resistant to planning ahead or incapable of making important decisions? Did you, a great question, Mary, by the way. Do you have any sort of insights based on your situation that can kind of help with this?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say you prepare. In every book I've read and every podcast and everything I've looked at, because I've done a lot, is you have to prepare for the inevitable. So what does that mean? That means, first of all, you have to have some kind of legal document in place, whether it's a will or a trust or power of attorney or medical power of attorney, post, or these certain documents, because otherwise you have no access, no control, you won't be able to be updated on their condition. You won't have any information. So if you can gently, kindly get them to give you a power of attorney for both financial and medical, because you want to help, but I know there's fraud, and you can worry about fraud. And I have a whole other set of issues, because then when my mom had everything go through, she had her financials in place or all of her legal documents in place, but we had a personal issue and a mental issue. But then my dad he'd never done his will, and he's older. He never done his will, didn't want to do his will, didn't care about doing his will. And so it took me 2 years of badgering him to get him to, I said, yeah, so again, I learned that whole process. And then during that process, dealing with my dad, my stepmother was diagnosed with primary progressive aphasia, which is what Bruce Willis has. So now, it just keeps getting better and better, juicier and juicier.
Well, no, and I think we've been so focused on your mom, I forgot that mom and dad are split up.
Divorced. Yeah, they're divorced. Sorry, they got divorced and then I had my stepdad, my stepmom, and
and this is the modern family, folks. This is, we've got tentacles all over the place, and we've got different opinions, and your story illustrates it all. And now I think one of the themes that you've really sort of focused on is the legal and sort of getting the documentation right. But I think one of the things that it's also been illustrated, and I can see why you're leaning into that, because when you don't have sort of a cooperative loved one, so, and Mary, to go back to your point, I think in a perfect world, Nicole's mom would, in her, while she was still working, would have said, Nicole and family, come on over and we're going to have a family meeting, and I'm going to tell you what my wishes are. And I met with an attorney and I got all my documentation together, and here's the access to it. And this is what I want you to do, X, Y, and Z. And there's this wonderful kumbaya brainstorming session. And then as she has health changes, she just willingly goes out and looks at continuing care, life plan communities, and says, my gift to you, family, is that I'm not a burden on you, and you can go enjoy your life. But that's not what happened here, and that's not what happens a lot of times. But I think that, Nicole, that one of the reasons why you have leaned into the elder law and the legal documentation is because at first glance you were seeing this resistance.
Yeah, and I tell people it's being thrown into this world, whether it's through cognitive impairment or physical issues or changes, is like you're trying to learn 3 new languages simultaneously under duress. So you're trying to learn financial issues, legal issues, and medical issues. They all have their own terminologies, their own wheelhouse, their own professionals, their own documents, and you're trying to learn all that at the same time, and you don't know anything about it, and you're going crazy. And so luckily, my husband's an accountant, my aunt's a health professional, so I wasn't afraid I'm the communicator. So I'm the cog, like I'm calling, I'm following up, I'm printing and scanning and collaborating. And so if you have, a lot of the books talk about having a quarterback. You have to have some kind of quarterback to manage all this. And then I would add, you have to have, your closest teammate, your core person. So my aunt and I were the core team, because we both love my mom. We care about my mom. We want to work together and so we pool our expertise, and we also have each other to lean on, because as a caregiver, it's such a solo, exhausting, draining nightmare. But if you have another solid person, almost like a caregiver spouse or a caregiver partner, then you have someone to lean on, and one can pop up when the other one's exhausted, or vice versa. And I wrote an article about that. So I highly recommend, but you have to start the conversation somewhere. I mean, a lot of people are afraid to talk about this stuff. Everyone's going to die. You don't know what your issue is going to be. Because my mom even says, well, why couldn't I have just gotten cancer? That'd be so much easier. And I'm like, no. Like, you don't get to pick. You don't get to pick what happens to you. So, but conversation and communication. So there's the one website called deathoverdinner.org.
We have been talking about that on so many of our discussions. And and by the way, is this, so this photo here is you and your aunt.
No, that's my mom.
Oh,
That's my
that's your
mom.
mom. Okay, okay.
Yeah. So that was at her house in yeah, that was her. Yeah.
No, because
She
when
would
I saw,
probably be, yeah,
but
she would
that's
probably be mad. She's in a Nike, like she was always dressed to the nines, and that was the other thing. So we were, she's in Southern California, and I go out there and we walk to the grocery store just to get out, and she'd be wearing like fleece and it'd be 90. I'm like, Mom, it's 90 degrees. She's like, okay, I'm gonna add another fleece. And I'm like, oh my God. So just all the stereotypical stuff. Like every caregiver journey is so different, and every diagnosis, every progression, but some of the things are similar, you know, about they don't understand the seasons, the time, it's just, I mean, you gotta laugh because it's crazy.
and I just want to read Leslie's comment here because it's great, especially for the folks listening on this on podcast. She says, prepare primarily by knowing that your emotions will be put through the greatest test of your life when your mom suddenly becomes unrecognizable. When she doesn't recognize you or attacks you or forgets your name, the rest of the objective worries are tiny in comparison. That's a great words of wisdom there. And then, so let's okay. Nicole shared that we started focusing on mom, but she's got other relatives that are in caregiving situations too. But let's just focus on mom for the time being. And I really want to talk about finding her a place to live and that experience. How did you find the place? What were some of the things that happened there? And then mom is still with us, right?
Yeah, she's in memory care. Yeah, she's
mom's
fine.
in memory care. And how to give it, I know it's a long story, we could talk for 3 hours, but
Yeah.
but tell us about that journey.
Yeah, well, so fortunately, my aunt found her a place, because so my aunt had toured the ones in California with her. My aunt had picked out, I think she actually worked with a consultant too, but toured a bunch of them near her, because I was going to have her near me, but that wasn't going to work out. So eventually my aunt found a place and secured a place, and it's 15 minutes from her house, and it's just a few hours away from me, so I can go down every couple weeks and stay with her and see my mom. And it really worked out the best possible. But in hindsight, it's perfect, but it took a lot of trial and error to get there. But my aunt did all the due diligence, all the searching, and so she's in a very lovely brand new memory care facility in Baltimore Metro, and she's in memory care. She is doing fine. She's physically completely, 100% doing well, but mentally, she does know who I am. She absolutely knows who I am. She still calls me all the time and says, I need to go home. I need to get out of here. I don't belong here. These people are old. So we get that all the time, but she's fine. She's careful. Like, it was a huge stress, but it's so expensive. It is weird. I tell people, if you're dirt poor or filthy rich, you're fine. But if you're in that vast middle, like Bob Kramer talked about, you've got a challenge. So we don't have the financial challenge. Fortunately, we sold her home in California for $1 gazillion, and that's what's paying for her care. And so she's in a wonderful place, and she knows who I am. And I embracing myself for the day when she has no clue who I am. I mean, I know that's coming, but for now we're good.
Now,
But
earlier on in the discussion, you were talking about talking to your aunt and talking about geriatric care managers, also referred to as aging life care managers. You talked about it, how you've used elder law attorneys. Are there any other professionals along this journey that you utilized? And the one thing that you haven't talked about too that I'd like you to address is selling mom's home and figuring out all of those possessions.
Literally it's been a crazy journey. But like I said, I'm not, I think I told you, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a financial planner, but I'm a daughter and I'm a doer. And so, it's task oriented. I can get it done because I'm not afraid to call, to talk, to follow up, to pursue. And so that's what I do. And yes, I think, my aunt found, I think it was some kind of geriatric care manager or consultant that she found through her network and used that person to tour several facilities and found the one that she liked the best and that worked out. They were just newly opening, they had space, and so all that worked out well in the end. And but yes, there are tons of professionals, and it's a giant resource pool of resources, but it takes a while to navigate all of it. So and the geriatric care managers are usually people who have a background in nursing or counseling, or they're licensed professionals that go through this additional process to focus on geriatric care managing. But then there's other lay people. There's so many acronyms. There's so many positions. There's, basically, I have a giant network because I love people and I talk to people all the time. And then when I started telling everybody about my mom, they're like, oh yeah, my grandma, my wife, my aunt, it's everywhere. And I'm in the sandwich generation, so it is everywhere. And so that's why my goal is to help people navigate as best I can. So I was like, get the legal documents in order, get your medical documents in order, and start having the conversations, because, and I know family relationships are difficult. I've got plenty of problems in my own family. So it's just, you've got to, or hire a counselor or a mediator or a neutral family member. I've got some family members shut down, some go away, some just want money. So, it's all in my book. Can I mention my book?
Oh, okay. Yeah. And this is the cool thing. And this is why I knew you would be a great guest, is because you started documenting this. But before you talk about the book, for those in the audience that aren't familiar with the profession aging life care manager, I'm really glad that you all used one, and that we have that as a reference point on this discussion. I'm dropping in the website for aging life care managers, and these are generally social work and nursing trained professionals that can sort of be an objective person, a professional that has seen this before, that can help you at any and all stages of this journey and enable you to sort of sit back and reflect on the recommendations and what have you. And the best thing about aging life care managers, I think, one of the best things is that even if you, an adult child, are paying an aging life care manager, the client is mom or dad, okay? And their focus is on what's best for mom and dad, what does mom and dad want, assuming that mom and dad's capacity is there. Because a lot of times as adult children, we sort of get a little bit too deep into parenting our parents, and these are adults, and that's a hard line to draw, as we're hearing. So, Nicole, you've got an amazing story here, and I think that telling the story has been very helpful. But one of the reasons you can tell it so well is that you actually have been putting a book together.
Yeah, I was involved with a literacy organization for a long time as a volunteer. Volunteerism has been very focused. We focused on volunteering in my family. So I volunteered for a literacy organization, and then I became a bigger reader. And then when this whole thing started going down, I turned to books. So I started reading as many memoirs and books and commentary that I could. But while we were going through it, I didn't have time to read them. And I had some time to read on the cross-country flights, but the emotion and the task list was so vast that I couldn't concentrate on reading. So I turned to a few podcasts, and that helped kind of introduce me. But then I just followed the breadcrumbs. So this podcast would reference this book, and then I went to the library, and then I started reading. So I just posted, I started posting my just very brief reviews of every book I read on Dementia Book Review on Instagram. And so then I read, and then I watch movies, and then I read more, and then I talk to people, and then I reach out to people. And then, so I'm just developing this knowledge base throughout my efforts. But I'm just a sponge. And the other thing that I found is there's similarities between the beginning of life and the end of life. So I have 5 children, and when I was having my babies, what to expect when you're expecting was the big book, and there were all these birthing stories, and I couldn't get enough. I was reading and watching and obviously living it. But so then at the same time at this, and you have your birth plan, and you think everyone's going to be, I think can go perfect, but it doesn't, because every birth story is so different. Every personal story is so different. And it's the same with your aging parent. Every family story is different. Every disease progression is different. Every aspect of it is different. So you need to put together a parent life plan, or a death plan, or an end of life plan. But you've got to just be prepared, but know there's going to be twists and turns and challenges and things that come up. But if you start to have the conversation and get your mind around it and listen to a couple podcasts or read a couple books, you'll feel more comfortable and like, oh, I have this option, or this is what happened to someone else, and you can use that to kind of guide you in your own journey, because everyone's going to have the journey at some point, pretty much.
Great. And then so all of this is culminated in and it's a wonderful way to sort of be crafting your own book, is to diving so deeply into the other books that are in this area. When do you expect your book to be complete?
Yeah, so I'm self-publishing, and I have a book coach and an editor, so it's about 90% done, and then I've got the cover. I'm working on so it's a process, right? And everything's coming together. So I'm hoping like end of June is my goal, but there's a lot of stuff going on. I've got one kid graduating from college, one kid starting college. There's, again, the sandwich generation just takes time, but I'm very excited. But there's all kinds of the good thing is the baby boomer generation that is aging, they drive all kinds of change, and this whole industry is exploding. There's just there's so much out there, and there's so much creativity, and there's so many new things going on. So it's very sad on one side of the pendulum, but it's also a very exciting time, because there's going to be innovation, there's going to be creativity, hopefully maybe some new drugs, but also I've just focused on behavior. You've got to just change. You've got to live in their reality. You've got to so instead of fighting with her and correcting her, I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Yeah. Sure. It's the middle of winter in New Zealand, or, I mean, which it is, but like, it's, whatever. I just agree with her. I agree with her, and I just hang out with her, and we go for coffee, and we just laugh, and it's very pleasant now.
Like I don't know if one of the books that you read was by Tam Cummings, but that's what I've heard her speak before, and that's what a lot of folks preach is that we get so frustrated because our mom or dad, they're in a different era, and we have clues, like, and Tam sells the story that my mom was 36 years old raising 3 small kids. That's where she was. And so she met her at that place, and all of a sudden the anger, the resistance for both of them sort of disappeared, because, okay, my mom is a 36-year-old mom raising kids, and the conversations that she was able to have, but the odd behavior, when you find where they are, whether it be New Zealand or at age 36, it all of a sudden becomes more rational, and you are able to understand it more.
Yeah, you have to meet them where they are. I figure, I know there's advances with pharmaceuticals and drugs and all this other stuff, and they're pursuing that. But I mean, every case is so different. Every family is so different. But the behavior, focusing on altering your behavior and it's hard, but I know some couples are contentious, and they have to be right, and they have to correct, but it doesn't do you any good. It just creates tension.
Yeah, this is great. Okay, folks, I'm looking at the clock. We're almost to an hour. Nicole, I could talk to you for 3 hours, but I dropped all of Nicole's contact info there. I hope it's okay. I dropped your email in there, because I think that you can be a really valuable resource to so many people. Before we jump off, I want to pull up an organization that you introduced me to, and it's that you're involved with, that's called Daughterhood. And I believe I'm working on getting them on to talk about this organization a little bit more. But can you tell us a little bit about this organization and what it means to you and how it can help people out?
Yeah, daughterhood, like I should have mentioned it earlier, but thank you for bringing it up. It's the number one best resource I have found. And it's started by a woman out of DC who also has experience, but it's you, most of the caregivers are daughters pretty much, but it's a nonprofit focused on caregivers and resources for caregivers and helping caregivers. So I was reading all these books and I came across this one book by a woman out of Princeton. And then in the book, she had a bookmark with a quote and daughterhood. And I immediately looked it up and I was immediately drawn in. I read the entire website. And then I noticed they didn't have a New Jersey circle. So I became the New Jersey circle leader and now lead a group of local women who are in the daughterhood space. Because I will also mention, I read this book called Elderhood by a geriatrician. And people always ask her, what's the secret to a long life? What's the secret? And she says, well, a little bit of money, a little luck, good health habits, and usually at least one good kid, usually a daughter. So that's what she said. So, but daughterhood is amazing. It's a network of women, primarily women, but men are allowed to vent, to share resources, to help each other. It's definitely just a comfortable forum, and definitely look it up.
Great. And I dropped that into chat. And then Deborah, let's see, Deborah, you've got your hand raised. If that's not by mistake, I've just prompted you to open up your mic and you can ask a question if you meant to do that. Mary says, thank you so much, Nicole, for sharing your story and being so vulnerable. I'm excited to check out Daughterhood and share it with my mother, who has been caring for my grandmother for 9 years. Well, Mary, thank you. And Nicole, thank you. This has been wonderful. And folks, if you're in the audience and you know somebody who, if you're listening to this and you know somebody that might want to share their story, make them feel better, to help other people like Nicole did, by all means, just drop me a line. I think that this is one of the most powerful ways that we can help each other, is just by telling our stories. And I hope that this was therapeutic and helpful to you, Nicole. I loved hearing your story and how much your story intersects with the questions and comments that we have on these discussions.
Well, thank you. And I don't remember how I found you, Steve, because I was always running around. But then when I saw your website and your videos and I chatted with you, I'm like, the good vibe. I talked about the good vibe. You got good vibes. So I'm very grateful for everything that you do for everybody, because you're such a wonderful resource.
I love it. All right, folks, everybody have a great weekend. And if there's something you need help with, you got Nicole's contact info, you got my contact info. We'll have this recording up later today. And we hope you all have a great weekend. Thanks.